That's, okay, that's what I thought. That's what I thought it was.
Dang, we got quiet.
Yeah. You had your touch.
Feel like you home.
I'd like to call this meeting of the New Hanover County Board of Education to order. If you would, please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance and the National Anthem.
Color guard, halt, left, ace, present, colors.
We'll now have the invocation. Lord, we thank you for this day, this opportunity to come together to serve. Be with us in our deliberations and help us to be wise in all decisions that we make, and that they are good for all those who have placed their trust and confidence in us. Grant us the humility also to always seek your will in all that we do and say. In your holy name I pray, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right, ace, forward, arch.
You may be seated. At this time, I would like to thank the students from John J. Blair Elementary School with school principal Barbara Stock and their music instructor Amanda Henson. Ms. Henson, there is a microphone right here. If you would pass the microphone among the children, if they would give us their name and the grade they're in.
Shandy is kiddos in 5th grade from Blair Elementary.
Carter Tanner from 5th grade in Blair Elementary.
Rachel Diaz from 5th grade elementary.
Darius Halls from 5th grade elementary.
Sahidi February from 5th grade at Blair Elementary.
Jesse Brown in 5th grade from Blair Elementary.
Cohen Sechrist from Blair Elementary, 5th grade.
Alexis Ganter, 5th grade from elementary.
Micaiah Dunham, 5th grade from Blair Elementary.
Irie West, Blair Elementary School, 5th grade.
Grace Clavedette, 5th grade, Blair Elementary.
Jordan Reed Daniel Liebeg, in 5th grade, Blair Elementary.
Haley Lambeth, 5th grade, Blair Elementary.
And the instructor is Amanda Henson.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The colors tonight, cadets, if you'll come back up, please. From Laney High School, Principal Al O'Brien, instructors Lieutenant Colonel Gary Green and Master Sergeant Bruce C. If y'all will come up and give us your name, rank, and the grade you're in, please.
I'm Cadet First Lieutenant Thompson. I am in 11th grade.
I'm Cadet Buck, Staff Sergeant from Laney High School.
I'm Cadet Second Lieutenant Rivera, 11th grade.
I'm Virginia Ross. I'm an airman in 11th grade.
Thank you very much. We always enjoy having a different color guard from one of our high schools present the colors at our meetings, and the various groups from our schools could be a large group or small group, but we always enjoy that. Ms. Adams, if you would, call the roll, please.
Donald S. Hayes.
Here.
Jeanette S. Nichols.
Here.
Janice A. Kavanaugh. Tammy J. Koval. Here. Lisa Eastet. Derek G. Hickey.
Here.
Edward B. Higgins.
Here.
Thank you. Item 2 on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Any additions or deletions to the agenda?
None.
Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. Thank you. Item 3 is approval of the minutes. Item A, from our regular meeting, November the 5th, 2013.
Move for approval. Second.
Any comments or questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. Item B is our work session minutes from November the 19th, 2013.
Move for approval. Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? They are approved. Item 4, recognition of achievement.
Our first recognition for the evening is for Miss Olivia Reeves. Olivia is an 8th grade student at Noble Middle School, and Olivia has won at the state level of the North Carolina Association of Soil and Water Conservation District. Olivia's speech is entitled "Water, the Cycle of Life," and it won at the county and area levels before going on to win first place at the state level. Olivia is our first New Hanover County School student ever to win at the state level for this prestigious contest. I would like to recognize Olivia's school principal, Mr. Wade Smith, and other Noble staff who might be in attendance tonight. Olivia was unable to attend tonight, but I believe her counselor, Mrs. Megan DeMolina, is here. If you would please come forward to accept this on Olivia's behalf. And we are so proud of her. Please join me. Our next recognition, Mr. Chairman, is for one of our outstanding employees, Mrs. Betsy Stanwood. Mrs. Stanwood is a 39-year veteran with the district, and her contributions to New Hanover County Schools have been exemplary. She gives 100% in every position she has held, from classroom teacher to her latest adventure as the transition specialist for New Hanover County Schools. We honor Mrs. Stanwood as she has been named the district's 2013 Exceptional Children's Teacher of Excellence. I would like to recognize Mrs. Stanwood's family, if you're here, and her co-workers who have come out to support her. Mrs. Stanwood, if you're here, would you please come forward? Congratulations, Betsy. And our last recognition for the evening goes to Karma Maples. Ms. Maples is the Gifted Education Specialist at Coddington Elementary School. Mrs. Maples has been named New Hanover County Schools 2013-14 Outstanding Teacher of the Gifted. She has greatly benefited our district as well as the region and the state with her efforts and achievements in the field of gifted education. Mrs. Maples will go on to be considered for the North Carolina Association for Gifted and Talented on the regional and state level. I would like to thank Mrs. Maples' family and the principal of Coddington, Mr. Eric Furman, for coming out tonight to support her. Mrs. Maples, if you're here, would you please come forward? There she is. Congratulations, and that concludes our ceremony. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Quattlebaum. Item 5 on the agenda is our call to the audience. We've had 3 individuals sign up. First individual is Tina Boyer.
Yeah, up to,
It won't get picked up on TV if you don't speak into this mic.
All right, good evening. I'm Tina Boyer, and hopefully this doesn't take 3 minutes, but I think I just wanted to share something that I shared on my Facebook page on November 4th instead of walking out. I wanted to share my feelings as a teacher in New Hanover schools, and I wrote that I am sick today. I am sick of wearing red on Wednesdays. I'm sick of listening to my colleagues complain about the current state of education in our state. I am sick of feeling underappreciated by our government officials. I'm sick of each year struggling more and more as my paycheck seems to get smaller and smaller in this economy. I'm sick of feeling stressed and frustrated with limited resources in order to achieve raised standards and expectations year after year. I'm sick of feeling helpless in a career I am so passionate over. I'm sick of feeling the overwhelming pressure of performing the impossible. I am a North Carolina educator. In kindergarten, I was asked what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I answered a teacher. I graduated from North Carolina Public Schools receiving the Teaching Fellow Scholarship and attended a North Carolina university. I began teaching in North Carolina Public Schools in 2003, and with each passing school year since then, I've experienced the feeling of loss. Loss of support, loss of resources, loss of monetary incentive, loss of respect. I have watched talented educators leave the profession they love because of these losses. I've watched the decrease in the value of an education in North Carolina Public Schools. And now, as my own children begin their academic careers in North Carolina Public Schools, I am overcome with fear. What is going to happen to the public school system? Taking away incentives such as increased pay for a master's degree, taking away job security by eliminated tenure, denying educators a yearly pay increase to award a year of experience as well as keep up with living expenses, taking away federal funds to support private and charter schools are sickening me. I fear that these policies will result in segregation in education. My students deserve more. My children deserve more. My colleagues and I deserve more. Why is more not being done to ensure educated, talented educators in every classroom in North Carolina Public Schools? Why is more not being done to support the professionals in which we trust to educate our children each and every day? Why is more not being done to guarantee the success of each individual in North Carolina by putting education first? Thank you so much for your time.
Next speaker is Nancy McCullough.
Hi, I'm Nancy McCullough, and I appreciate this chance to speak to you. I'm employed by neither the school system nor the state of North Carolina, so I have no personal axe to grind regarding the 25% teacher contract issue. But I did teach high school and chair a department for 34 years in Montgomery County, Maryland. I'm just as passionate today about children in schools as I was 40 years ago when I started my career. I'm speaking tonight to urge you to pass the resolution that's stated in Appendix R on your agenda. I've been very impressed with the concerns expressed by both staff and school board members as you've grappled with how to apply this new law and handle its repercussions. Dr. Welmer spoke clearly last month about how this will subvert collaboration among teachers. I was glad to hear Mrs. Nichols say in October that the new law is just not fair. It was great to hear a member ask if the board might have the option to simply not implement it. Your deep consideration of this profound problem is deeply appreciated. I can tell you that teaching absolutely requires collaboration among staff. Collaboration is the very life and breath of this profession. You are aware of the dramatic turnover rates of new teachers in the United States, with almost 50% leaving the profession within 5 years. I can personally attest to the complexity of mastering teaching and the absolute necessity of unifying staff and nurturing collaboration. I know that you share with me the goals of nurturing excellent teaching, decreasing attrition, raising morale, promoting professionalism, and supporting respect for teachers as they carry out their countless responsibilities. So it is difficult for me to imagine a policy more destructive than this one. This resolution may seem radical, but I would argue that it is deeply conservative instead. For if the legislature can be persuaded of its errors by courageous school boards, you will have acted to conserve and protect New Hanover County schools. I urge you to pass this resolution. And if you cannot legally sign this resolution, may I suggest that you vote for a slightly different resolution, one which states that you would sign it if you could. This public show of support might wake up the General Assembly and get them to reconsider this destructive policy. It would also be a profound show of badly needed and deeply deserved support and respect for teachers. Thank you.
Next speaker, George Blassett.
My name is George Vlasic, and I'm a retired school teacher. I retired to Wilmington because I have family here. As a matter of fact, I have a niece and 3 nephews attending New Hanover County schools. So I guess I do have a dog in this game. I'm asking the board to support, in any way it can, the NCAE resolution that opposes the offer of only 25% of teachers' 4-year contracts. As a veteran educator, I can attest to the importance of collaboration in improving the delivery of instruction. The award-winning district where I taught recognized this and set aside several days a year to promote collaboration. However, setting teachers against each other to compete for a limited number of slots will make collaboration impossible. We need to treat teachers as the professionals they are and oppose any effort to institute a perverted version of the Hunger Games in the teaching profession. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, item 6, administrative personnel. Dr. Markley?
No.
Okay. Next item, item 7, under information, item A, policies on for first reading. Mrs. Nichols.
We have two policies tonight, as you said, for first reading. Policy 7040 is the school day, and then policy 8500 is participation in curricular and co-curricular activities, which tie together. And I'm going to ask Dr. Holliday if he will present these two policies.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. As you know from our discussions on this, this is an opportunity in Policy 8500 for individual parents to apply for services outside the school district during the school day, and it provides for a procedure for them to do that. We were directed to do so by the board and think we have a legal way to do this, a legally defensible way to do this. We've consulted both our attorney and special ed attorneys at Tharrington Smith. Even though it would not always be special ed children who would apply. It could be anybody, but it would be a process that they would go to apply for these outside services during the school day. And also the other policy, which would be the school day, which would allow for that exception in that policy, which policy 7040 actually defines the school day as a length of time. This verbiage would allow approval of the superintendent or the designee, which would probably be me, in this particular situation, to exempt someone from that so that they could achieve those services. So we recommend passage of this in the second reading, Madam Vice Chair, and certainly would entertain any questions that you or any other member of the board would have.
Do you have any questions?
Any board members have any questions? It's on for a first reading.
Right?
Just information.
I do have a question. As I understand it, what would happen is if a parent desired to have their child attend a school, and I know the specific one we have been talking about, is the Hill School. So I'll use that as the example. There would be a process that they would submit a request to the superintendent or his designee. Now, yes. The question I think that's going to be raised is how specific, how detailed, what kind of, will there be a kind of a yes/no questionnaire that goes with this? Or
there's a form, and the form is on the screen at this time, Mr. Higgins, and we presented that with the information at the last meeting. That would be our process that goes along with it. A parent would fill this out, submit it to Student Support Services, which would be my office, and my team would take a look at it and render a decision. And of course, if the parent wanted to appeal that if it were a no, we would appeal it under General Statute 115C-45. We've modeled this after a couple of other school districts around the state that are doing something like this, and which is why we think we can legally defend this if we got into a legal challenge with allowing someone to do this. Okay.
Could there be, I know some of the concerns expressed before, were the financial possibilities of later, based upon this, as to then we didn't provide those services.
We think this addresses those concerns. I really appreciate the help from Wayne, the special ed staff, and everyone in terms of, and Rick in putting this together. But I think the policy and the procedure that's in place should address all of those concerns. Yeah, we have to, Dr. Markley said, we have to offer FAPE, and this would not be in lieu of FAPE, and we would not be offering this as a part of FAPE. We would offer FAPE, and if the parent chose to reject FAPE and to do something like this is how they would do it.
Right. Any other comments, questions?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to point out that any first reading policy is online for feedback from the community, and the policies that were presented today at the policy committee meeting will soon be posted for feedback. So we're open to all kinds of suggestions and recommendations and concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. So that takes care of 8,500 and 7040?
Yes, thank
Any
you.
no other questions? Okay, item B, Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, Appendix B, Mary Hazel Small. Give us the good news.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight, I am pleased to present the Comprehensive Annual Report for the year ended June 30th, 2013. You have a copy of the report at your place. It's also found for the public on the finance page of the system website. And the report format is very similar to prior years. It's got 4 sections. The introductory section includes a letter of transmittal to the board and the citizens of the county, which just provides a brief financial overview. The financial section includes the financial audit report, management's discussion and analysis, and the actual financial statements. The MD&A, or management's discussion and analysis, provides more detailed financial analysis of the statements. The statistical section gives readers a 10-year trend information, and the compliance section includes all the compliance reports from the auditors. The basic financial statements include 2 kinds of statements present different views of the board's financial condition. The first 2 statements are government-wide and provide both short-term and long-term information on the board's overall financial status, while the remaining statements report the board's operations in much more detail. These governmental fund statements tell how basic services were financed, as well as what remains for future spending. The total governmental fund expenditures for last year totaled $224 million, of which 74% was instructional, 21% support, 3% capital, and 2% other. Final per pupil operating costs were $8,590, and that represented a 2% increase over the prior year. The unassigned general fund balance is almost $18 million, which represents 8% of governmental expenditures, and that's the board's minimum fund balance goal that was set last year, or I think 2 years ago. At this time, I would like to take a moment and thank the finance staff, members, and Nancy Braswell for their work to support the audit and for the dedicated service throughout the year. I'd also like to introduce Michelle Thompson, our manager, audit manager with Cherry Beckert, to present the actual audit results and publicly thank her and the rest of the audit team for their outstanding professional service. At the end of her presentation, we'll be glad to answer any questions you have. Michelle?
Good evening. I'm not going to cover that PowerPoint that we gave you in detail, so don't start falling asleep yet. I'm going to really briefly just give you the highlights, and then when you need something to go to sleep, go read that presentation. So thank you again for letting me have the opportunity to present to you guys tonight. It will be brief. It's just an overview of the results. So what we've done is we've completed the financial statements for the current year, and what everyone always wants to know is what was our opinion, our independent audit opinion, and it was an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance that an independent accounting firm can provide. You will note that language, if you may note, that language has changed from prior years. In prior years, we would have said you received an unqualified opinion, but the audit standards changed this year, and that changed that term from unqualified to unmodified. Again, highest level of assurance, and once again, the school board has received that level of opinion. What our opinion does is provide reasonable assurance that the financial statements that Mary Hazel just presented to you, or just gave you the highlights of, are free of material misstatement, and so we have provided that highest level of assurance. The audit report does look a little bit different than it did in prior years, and in prior years it was just a lot of words on one page, and now it has subtitles where it very specifically says what management's responsibilities are and what the auditor's responsibilities are, and then very clearly says here's the auditor's opinion. So that was a change in auditing standards this year, so it will look a little bit different. On those slides, I know you're going to read at some point, slides 6 and 7, you will find the detail of our audit plan, what we did in specific areas, and what our audit approach was. So if you have interest in looking at that, those 2 slides will cover that. The 3 slides that you're probably most concerned with is where we do discuss our opinions, which are slides 8, 9, and 10. And in all 3 cases of those opinions, we say they're unmodified. So what are those opinions? We give the opinion on the financial statements themselves. We give an opinion on compliance with laws and regulations. And then we give an opinion on the administration of state and federal awards that the school board does. And in all cases, the highest level of assurance was given. In addition, we provide you with a letter that has certain information that we're required to communicate to the board. We're required to do that in writing, and we've done that in 2 ways. One is this letter that's been up on the screen, and it's also the key points of that are highlighted on slides 11 and 12 in that PowerPoint. There was one new auditing standard that was put in place, one new accounting standard that was put in place this year. It did not have a material effect on the school board's presentation at all. It changed the balance sheet look a little bit, but nothing material. So that was really the only major thing that occurred this year that was different besides the change in the way the audit opinion looks. In closing, I would like to thank the staff for their assistance. It's a big job to get through the audit process. We start in late spring, and we just finished recently, so they're really glad to see us leave after this presentation. Any questions?
Board members have any questions, comments about the audit?
I think we need to give them a big hand for all their work, though. In fact,
thank you very much. Item C, Content Literacy Continuum Research, State Improvement Project, Appendix C. Dale Pelsey-Bacton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Emma Jackson, our Title I Director, Federal Programs, and Ms. Carol Sutton, our Supervisor of Title I, has worked very closely with this project and will now, per request, give you some updated information.
Thank you for giving us this opportunity. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to share this information with you. Ms. Sutton will give you an overview, and if you have any questions, we'll be glad to answer those questions for you at the
Good evening. I've been a part of a project called Content Literacy Continuum with Kansas University, the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, and with Williston Middle School now for almost 3 years. We were invited in 2011 by the state to participate in a pilot with Kansas. We had to apply for a grant for that process, and we had to wait to be awarded the grant to proceed with implementation. Senior staff made the decision to go forward with that, and we were awarded that grant at the end of 2011. It is a program that comes out of Kansas University. Kansas University has a large research for learning lab. They've been doing research for about 25, 30 years now on the process of learning. What it takes to learn, how a child learns. They're very interested in that. And they have developed some strategies and a framework to address 5 different levels of learners and helping them specifically. What we're using is with a program for adolescent learners. It's like 6th grade through 9th grade, because they recognize that adolescent literacy issues in the United States are profound, and that we need to do something to help our children be able to read if we want our children to go on and become college and career ready. So it becomes problematic, especially at the middle school level, then carries over into the high school level, when a child feels like he can't succeed. No matter how hard he tries, he can't succeed. There's a difference between being able to read and then read with meaning, read for comprehension, reading to be able to understand. So we started the partnership, and it's a partnership that addresses, in our system, low, medium, and high level achievers. So there's 3 different levels of intervention that are in process of being vetted. The partnership required that we use the trainers from Kansas University. They come on a schedule that they put together with the feedback from the school at which they're employing these learning strategies. The school had to set up a literacy team. It consists of administration. There's several administrators that rotate. The principal is involved, and then there's an AP. There's an instructional coach that's involved too. We have on on the literacy team members from all content areas in the school. So that includes all of your core content teachers as well as your support and enhancement teachers. It includes ESL, it includes EC, it includes a PE person. So we are, because reading is not just happening in a reading classroom, it happens across the board. So they're all part of that team. I am also not a part of the team, but as coming out of Title I and instruction, I support that team. I support Kansas in their endeavor. I support the school and the teachers in that school and the children in that school. And my job is to act as a liaison between all partners. Okay, this kind of shows you in a very simplistic manner what we do. We have 3 levels, as I said, of strategy instruction. Level 1 are the most diversified children. They're the ones that are already succeeding. They can read, they can make meaning of what they are reading, but they need support and strategies to help them go deeper with the content. So they get enhancement strategies. A lot of graphic organizers to help them have a framework on which they apply the knowledge so that they can then take it to the next level and make connections with other content areas, for example. The second level is a little bit more intensive. They use embedded strategies, again, in all content areas, but these are a little bit more directed by the teachers. They are a little bit more hands-on with the teachers, and they are used for, again, for comprehension, but at a more supportive level. The third level is something called extreme reading, and this is for the children that are reading at least 2 to 4 grade levels below where they should be. So for a middle school, that means when a child is at 8th grade and they're reading 4 levels below grade level, they can't function and work at the level that they're required to work at to be able to be successful and move on to high school. So that's the most intensive piece. That's the most direct instruction piece. It is not direct instruction. If you know what that is, with where it's scripted, there's a lot of latitude with the teacher using the tools, using the strategies, but it is more closely one-on-one with the child. Specific text structures, summarizing, paraphrasing, inferencing, which is a big obstacle for children at the middle school level, those kinds of things are addressed. It's a continuing cycle. It is not taught in isolation, one piece from the other. If you look at the chart, the research has shown that it improves reading comprehension, but it also improves motivation for reading, because a lot of children will come to middle school and reach a block where they feel they can't be successful. And then we have motivational issues become behavioral issues, and it just compounds the problem for the child. We want them to be able to read and move forward. It makes them hopeful. They feel empowered when they can make meaning from text. They feel successful, and then they have success in the academic classroom. And there's research to back up all of these pieces. The team from Kansas comes in throughout the school year. They also have conferences to which they invite the teachers that are able to go to get additional training. They've had Summer Institute for the teachers too. This is all financed from the grant that we were awarded. And again, content teachers have been trained. That's all content teachers in the building that were there for the last 2 years. This cycle, they're going and they're sustaining what they've put in place and meeting teachers that have not yet had the training, and they're getting the training that they missed. The literacy team makes the decisions for the school because it's got administrative people on there, teachers on there, me as a monitor. They're able to make the decisions based on data that they collect as to where they move forward and what they need the most. So they make the decisions. So it's not something that is canned and they come and they bring it to you and you have to do it the way they say or the way they roll it out, but you have a choice about what part of it is going to be of interest to you and your students and how you're going to move forward. We have a plan to sustain it. Right now we have one extreme reading teacher there. Her name is Abby Nussbaum. She has received professional development to sustain the initiative. She has gotten additional training because she has expressed interest in becoming a trainer for them and to sustain it and move it forward in our other schools. If when we get the data back from Kansas, this proves to be something that we're going to look at for the rest of the system. We have contracted, we contract with the people from Kansas every year, and we hope to have in-house professional development because we also have 2 trainers on their strategies in the EC department here with our system. So I think we're in good shape to move forward if the data so indicates. The research behind this, along with what Kansas does, and it's been like 3 decades of research on their part, they have been researched, or strategies have been researched by other entities. One I'm going to mention is Manpower Demonstration Research Corporation. That's a mouthful. They call it MDRC for short, and it's a very reputable nonprofit, nonpartisan education and social policy research organization in the United States. It was founded in 1974 by the Ford Foundation and a group of federal agencies. They're funded completely by government agencies and 70 private, family, and corporate foundations. Their research is objective, unbiased, and evidence-based. Second one is REL out of the Midwest. That's a regional educational laboratory. They have done research on this consortium, on this endeavor as well, and they are part of the National Center for Education Evaluation and Regional Assistance. As this relates to us, our county, unfortunately, we don't have any conclusive data yet. We won't have any until the end of this year when our pilot of 3 years is over. Kansas is collecting it. They will process it and put it together. I'm sure it'll be a nice, slick package. And from that point forward, we will make a decision after we analyze what the results are and see if it is productive for our students, if our students are learning, and if it's a good way to move forward. I'm sure that we will. And if it's something that is not working for us, I'm sure we'll take another look at it and just make a decision, probably in the other direction. So that's where we are right now. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Board members have any questions?
You mentioned the middle school child who may be 4 levels or years behind.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, is this child pulled out during a period of time? Does someone go in and help that student? How does this work?
That's a good question. Right now it's working, and these are the teacher that I mentioned has 3 classes of extreme reading. So she has 3 regular classes of extreme reading. So it is a class that takes place. The teacher is a certified English teacher, reading teacher. So it is not a pull-out situation. It is instruction.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
This would take the place of like an elective time block? Is that what you're saying? Or this would be like a language arts time?
This is in addition to their language arts that they get.
Okay.
So yes, it's like an elective.
Okay.
But it's not an elective because they're placed in there because they are so far behind.
Okay. But the strategies are used in all of the other classes? Is that what you're saying? It kind of
There are different levels of strategies. The students that are with Ms. Nussbaum are the most at-risk students because they're the furthest behind. So they have to, they need more depth, they need more support. And then as they go into the other classes, they're seeing the same kinds of strategies. I mean, there are only so many ways you teach paraphrasing and summarizing and so forth. So they see the same kind of thing going on in the content. So there's that, not one person doing one thing and somebody doing something else, but it's a continual referral back to the same strategy that everybody's using. And then when they get to the students that are diverse and they're in the upper level, the first level, then they're using graphic organizers to, after they take what they read, to be able to organize it, to make new meaning of it and apply it to novel situations.
So is this something that was started back with the 6th graders and it's been moved up with 6th, 7th, and 8th?
We have, we started it with a different principal. We started it with the 8th grade. We had it at all grade levels. We lost some teachers. So due to various things that have occurred within the school, it's now just housed in the 8th grade, the extreme piece. The literacy team is discussing the need to really come back and take another look at their plan, and because their plan fits into their school improvement plan as well. They're having that discussion with the school improvement team to make sure that everybody's aligned. And they're looking at what the data that they have from their end of grade results and so forth, and the formative assessment that they use in-house, that there are many more children that need this. So the object would be to get some more teachers that would be on board and maybe make a mid-year shift. So I don't know how that's going to turn out. We have a meeting coming up in another week or so. Kansas is coming in, so we'll take a look at that, because nothing is done to them. Everything is done in cooperation with what is best for the students.
So University of Kansas was the one that it was their suggestion that it start in 8th grade?
No, that was our suggestion. Okay. Because this is a adolescent literacy initiative, and the focus from their research for these strategies was 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. So we have a lot of problems with the 9th grade when children come and they can't read, to be expected to do high school level work. And it's a different kind of mindset. You're supposed to be coming and being able to read, and some kids don't. So we had to catch them up. So the idea was to have them ready to go into 9th grade and not be so far behind.
I guess that's my question. In terms of gathering data, it would seem to me to be difficult to gather data with students who are not there any longer. And how are you going to be able to gather data for children who are now 2 years gone from the school?
The only data that we collect is what we collect for state and what we're collecting in-house for tests and things like that. The Kansas folks give a baseline test, and then they do a follow-up test at the end. There also has been a writing test that's been administered, so there are other various forms of testing that they have done, and like I said, their data is not complete yet either. So we're waiting to see how that looks. Anything else?
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for your time.
Item D, supporting school volunteers, Appendix S. Dr. Wilmers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 132,000 hours is the number of hours that school volunteers give us every year. And if we were to stretch that end to end, it would go all the way to the moon. I'm just trying to make you think, but it's a lot of hours, and it's an impressive number. And what we want to talk about today was what we're doing with our volunteer programs, how we've developed policies and procedures to support volunteers and to support our schools. I went too far. The school system welcomes and invites all parents, parent community members, stakeholders, businesses, and anyone who wants to bring their enthusiasm, support, and skills into our schools. And we do that on a daily basis and have done that for many years. The school system's developed and is implementing right now policies and procedures which support our school volunteers and support our schools. This past summer, the school system basically completed an internal audit concerning school volunteers and the way that we work with school volunteers. The audit said that we had a lot of good practices in the schools, but they weren't consistent. They weren't followed throughout the system. Also, we didn't have written policies concerning the way that we do volunteer practices. And finally, the school system didn't have a process in place to complete volunteer background checks. Also, one of the things is, as the HIPAA laws and FERPA laws have changed, was the way we were working with student data and data in the schools with volunteers was becoming an issue. So it was something we had to look at. How do we manage and handle that while we continue to support the school volunteers that we had? The superintendent formed a committee in order to review the policies and the procedures we were using. And this committee was made up of these individuals. Nancy Braswell, our internal auditor, was the chair of the committee. And as you can see, it included principals, Dave Spencer, our safety director, Amy Conklin, who's here tonight, was on the committee, and they did a lot of work in getting this information together, putting it together. In June, the committee reviewed other school districts and what they were doing with policies and procedures in their volunteer programs, and they talked to the staff in the schools who worked with volunteers. They recommended to the superintendent and the policy committee that two things happen. One was that we make a consistent policy, a strong policy, which supported volunteers in the schools. The other was that we created a volunteer handbook, and that handbook would spell out the procedures and the processes we used to support volunteers in the schools. Those two things were done by the September board meeting. The policy committee and the volunteer committee met together to go over the handbook, and it's a very strong procedural process, and it really supports the volunteers as they work in the schools. There was a lot of things that were done in there that were changes what we did with the system. Even though we continued to build on the good practices that we had, we made some procedural changes. One of the ones that we looked at was how we worked in the office, and how volunteers worked in the office. And as office staff were working, we wanted to make sure that we had that separation of student information and the good volunteer work that was going on. And we're still working to do that. It's a challenge depending upon the way the buildings are laid out, the way the offices work, but what we're trying to do is make sure that we're protecting students' privacy rights and yet supporting the volunteers who give us such good service. So that's been the goal of that process. School volunteer program is made up of individuals who bring a lot into the schools on a daily basis. We have the Watchdog programs. We have our business community volunteers who come in. They represent the mission of where they're working, and they bring those skills and services into the schools. A school volunteer is basically a person who works without remuneration, typically is always under the supervision of staff, and basically includes athletic coaches who also don't receive remuneration. The school volunteers support and services, and it's a collaborative effort, and that's one of the things we want to really promote, and that is what the committees were trying to promote as they develop these processes, is the collaboration with what the school volunteers and the businesses, community members, and associations that they represented could bring into the school. And there was a lot of discussion about that, a lot of ways that we could support that. We're going to develop a volunteer coordinator, or the principals have already named a volunteer coordinator in each school who will manage the volunteer program at the building level. A level 1 volunteer, and what we did was we broke volunteers into two groups. A level 1 volunteer basically works as a classroom assistant, a clerical assistant, can work in the cafeteria in all aspects of the school, but they're always supervised by school staff, by someone in the school, typically a teacher or an administrator. They're always under direct supervision. They may come in and just read for an hour. They may come in and have a drop-in and just eat lunch with their child. Those are always those and help out at the end of lunch. So those volunteers are considered a level 1. They're very critical of what we do day in and day out. But what we're doing is we're not requiring a background check for those volunteers. Level 2 volunteers will be working on the direction of a school staff member and will continue to, but there's a possibility or an opportunity during the day that they may be alone with students, that they may not be under the direct supervision of school staff, but instead they may be in a situation where they're alone with students. That can include tutors who are providing after-school help or chaperones who go on field trips. What we're doing is we're going to require that those individuals, beginning January 1 of 2014, have a background check completed. We've worked with the Background Investigation Bureau, which is the background company that currently provides our professional staff hiring and applicant background checks. We'll do a 3-year background, or it's good for 3 years, a background check good for 3 years on all level 2 volunteers. What we'll have on the website is basically a web page that the volunteer will go to, and they will basically apply, so to speak, online. They'll fill out the application. It has all the information about the volunteer program at that level there. That background check is $20, and there's actually a process in there for do it, and it will cover 3 years. They'll actually get a volunteer card that will be good for those 3 years. At the end of the 3-year, we'll roll through it again, but we're trying to make that as seamless as possible. The Background Investigation Bureau is already doing this type of thing for several other school systems, so we're piggybacking on what they've learned from doing it with them. Like I said, this will go live January 1. It will be connected to our website, and it's a fairly easy process for the volunteer to go through. The information is protected. The Background Investigation Bureau will actually do the review and the determination if the volunteer meets the criteria that we have established in our volunteer and employee policies governing background checks. It's the same level of background. And so they will make that decision and work with the school level volunteer to handle the process at the building level. So that's what we've got set up. It will go live January 1. If you want to volunteer, we want you to contact the school of your choice. There's a volunteer coordinator there. There's, of course, a principal or assistant principal who would be glad to work with you. We'll set that up. Effective January 1, we'll have the website live. You can sign up at that point. It will give a lot more information. There's already, the handbook is already online. It will tie directly into the policy and the handbook guidelines. We welcome everybody to volunteer. We want people in our schools who are there to help our students, to help us as we work through the school day, to help our teachers, and we've got an awful lot of good people right now. So we want to continue to support them. In a nutshell, that's our volunteer program. Questions, anything I can help with?
Dr. Wellners, how long would the background check process take?
Approximately 3 to 4 days.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
That's good.
The turnaround time is actually a little short of that, but they have to then get the information to the school coordinator who will review it.
Okay. Suppose I've been a volunteer for years, and I've taken a child out in the hallway and tutored that child with no supervision. I still have to have that background check?
If you're during the school day and you're in the hall reading with a student, no. There's still a supervisory nature to the school. There are still people in the school. But if you're going to do that after 3:15, say, or at 3 o'clock, and the majority of folks have left the school or there's not direct supervision, and you're going to do that on an extended basis, yes, we want to get a background check.
Any other questions, comments?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Wellers. Item 8, Superintendent's Report. Item A, evaluation of New Hanover County Schools after-school supplemental educational services. Appendix D, Dr. Markley.
All right, one of the changes that came about with the some flexibility under No Child Left Behind was the ability to provide our own after-school programs. And one of the requirements, though, was that we do an evaluation. Dr. West, with the Masonboro Group, has conducted that evaluation, and I'll ask him to present his report.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Markley. And thank you for the privilege of being with you this evening to share this report. With any evaluation report, you're required to use a certain type of evaluation model. The evaluation model used in this report is the logic evaluation model. Essentially, it has 4 components to it. Context, what's the context? What are the inputs? What's the process or activities? And then what are the products or the results? So what I'll try to do tonight is quickly give you the context. Services for disadvantaged students were started under Lyndon Johnson with the Elementary and Secondary Education Act in 1965. I'm sure you all are very familiar with that. It was reauthorized in 1970 because it's reauthorized every 5 years. When President Clinton was in, they changed the name of it from ESEA to Improving American Schools Act. And then under President Bush, it was changed to No Child Left Behind. As Dr. Markley said, school districts were given the flexibility to provide their own programs after school to assist students who needed additional services. In 2011, there were multiple vendors. An evaluation by SERV, the Southeastern Region Education Vision for Education, which is a federally funded regional lab, evaluated all the programs. One of their findings was the lack of quality control. There were so many vendors that the quality control factors weren't there. So the school district made a decision after input from principals to run their own program and selected a program called the Compass Learning Odyssey Curriculum. This year, this past school year, you'd be amazed to know that there were 770 students that received additional educational services 2 days a week after school, and there were 215 middle school students that were involved. These were schools that were Title I eligible schools. When you look at the time, what was amazing to me was the attendance in the elementary schools. The elementary schools had 99% attendance, and 13 schools had 100% attendance, which says to me that the kids really wanted to be there and to learn. Middle schools, the attendance was not as great, but depending on the school, there was a high of about 97% and a low of about 84, for an average of about 91%. The fun part for me and our evaluation team was going in and watching the students. These students completed over 77,000 learning activities, and they're web-based. They're reading passages, they're manipulatives, they're videos they use, they're animations, and where you make learning fun with it as best you can after school, after a full day. What was interesting too was watching the difference in time per task. The computers are set up where you can monitor all this stuff. And the average task time for an elementary student was 11 minutes, and almost 12 actually. And for middle schools, a little over 8 minutes. So the tasks were programmed to the students' reading level and mathematics level, and they were just timed to make them very challenging for them. The range of activities depended on really the students themselves and the type of difficulty they had or ease. There was a range of 55 to 124 activities per student. In the elementary schools and in the middle schools, it was from 20 to 71, depending on the student and the school. The pupil-teacher ratio, I think, had a lot to do with the success of the program. Elementary schools, it was 1 to 7, and in the middle schools, it was 1 to 6, and which is pretty good class size, if you want to call it like that. The criterion reference test, which was used by Compass Learning, the composite score reading and math, language arts reading and math, was about 70%, with a wide range in elementary schools and a wide range in the middle school, depending on the schools. The exciting thing in looking at the data, though, and I want to thank Karen Green and her staff, who were extremely helpful. When we looked at the norm reference test results, we found that we couldn't make prior year comparisons because the test changed, the integrated test changed because of Common Core. But our team looked at how many students the prior year were low level 1s and 2s and very few 3s, and then how they did this year on the integrated test. We did find that a substantial number of the students were mid and high level 1s and mid and high level 2s, and there were some low level 3s. The prior year, when you looked at their test scores, which is one of the indicators for their selection, was that they were low level 1s and low level 2s. So the real test will come, I think, next year when you've got apples and apples, and you can look at this year's score results, last year's score results, and this year's score results, and run a more sophisticated statistical analysis that would tell you how much growth actually occurred. But preliminary indications are that the program should pay off if you got the same students in the program. The program did have its normal first-year kinks. Teachers learning the curriculum, time management with the students, those types of things. Their results over the school year on the criterion reference test improved. It took them, if you're going back and look at the data, how long it took to do an activity last November and comparing it to April, they were completing the task a little faster. And the fact that the large number of the kids scored and students scored mid-level 1s and 2s compared to low-level 1s and 2s is a good sign. So, and I want to thank you for the privilege of being here tonight, and I hope each of you have a joyful holiday season, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Dr. West?
Yes, ma'am.
In studying your results, I looked and you mentioned attendance. The schools that need to improve their scores, their attendance was very low as well.
Right.
So what are we doing to does that mean the child is not at school and that's why they weren't there for
Correct.
the after-school tutoring?
Correct.
So what are we doing helping these parents understand if your child's not here on Tuesday and Thursday, he or she's not going to get that extra help?
That's exactly right. So I'm sure I haven't discussed that particular thing with the principals and the teachers involved. I'm pretty confident, knowing the good principals in the school system, that they are making contact if the parents have a phone.
And I'm confused about the activities. I understand increasing or reducing the time it takes to complete the activity, but the number of activities that a child achieves is a good thing? Are they rushing through? Are they mastering? What? How does that work?
They have to master before
they can move on.
Before the computer will allow them to go on to the next task.
Okay.
And one
That
of the
wasn't
things that
clear.
I wanted to mention, when you were asking about the attendance, we have individuals that we have hired there that monitor the programs. These people, they call those parents. And we're not talking about the teachers that are actually teaching. We actually have individuals at each of those schools who are hired, and that's one of the things they do. They follow up with that.
That's that extra person
At each
that
school,
is
yes.
there to...
That's
okay.
the
And
additional
so-
person that's hired there.
And so you get that information from each school
Yes,
on a
because,
monthly basis or
mhm.
what? So that we don't
This-
wait till the end of the year and...
We have Mr. Cummins, who is the supervisor for this program, and he follows up. He follows up with the schools. He is in those schools. Each of those days, he follows up with that. And those people actually report to him.
Okay, thank you.
And that's at each of the schools.
One more question I had. We can't really use the data because of the change of tests, but
Right.
next year's fifth graders that are going to go over to sixth grade, are you going to be able to keep up with those students to see if they are in the after-school tutoring? Because that's a volunteer program, right?
Right.
One of the recommendations that we did this year because this is the second year that we're using it, we downloaded the information from the elementary schools, went right into the middle schools. So they had that to continue those students in there. So this year in our sixth grades, we should have students that came from the elementary school.
So we need to recruit at the middle school to ensure the transition is there for those children.
Right. And, you know, the next year I think will be a real telling period in terms of the success or failure of the program or what modifications need to be made. But because we will have apples and apples with the new integrated test.
Okay, good, thank you.
Question. You know, I appreciate the information. I appreciate all the graphs and everything. But was there any correlation developed? I mean, Ms. Nichols asked about the attendance to how many tasks were completed or to how well they were working. I know one of the graphs here is the number of people, number of teachers working with students. And, you know, I look at it and I see some schools that have I guess a relatively high number, maybe 1 to 10, and yet they're not necessarily doing as well as maybe other schools. Did we do a correlation to show whether or not there was an optimal range of how many students we should be dealing with at any given time to be able to get the best results?
Great question. Each school was allotted a certain number of slots, and it varied from school to school based on a certain percent. I'm sure Ms. Jackson could tell you that. And the ratio with the schools depended really on the number of students that participated. So one school might have 1 to 10 versus another school 1 to 6. So it was really based on the number of slots. The one thing, one of the kinks that I did find, our team found, was the coordination between the regular classroom teacher and the after-school teachers. And there have been some things that, to try to get your question, I think this year there's better coordination between the after-school and the regular classroom teacher, because they've had a year to work through the mechanics.
We learned some things from last year. And one of the things about the ratio, if we assigned 40 students to a school, we hired 4 people, 4 teachers for them. So then it was up to the school to make sure that they got their numbers.
Did that make any difference whether or not it was a priority school or a non-priority school?
No, I treated all the Title I schools were eligible for this, and we treated them all the same. We did give a larger percentage at Snipes. They had twice the number that they would have been allotted.
Slots. Yeah.
Slots.
Okay.
So I actually have, instead of having 1 person hired, we actually have 2 people hired at Snipes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
And
Thank you,
one
Dr.
thing I
Webb.
think I need to mention, besides the compass learning, the session is divided, it's 90 minutes and it's divided into 3 different components. We actually have one of the slots, the 25-minute slots, is devoted to homework.
Yes.
That comes from the classroom, and I think that that was an important piece that we included. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next presentation is rather lengthy, and I've been asked to take a break, so we'll take a short break at this time.